Hi again, and welcome to the show. My name's Craig Hamilton Parker. I'm a psychic medium, and I give my psychic insights, my predictions, and so on about things that are happening in the world. And today I want to talk about Japan because I see something happening with Japan that not only will affect Japan, but will affect everybody in the world. Well, hi again, everybody. Well, lots going on in the world at the moment, and I'm surprised. You're probably surprised that I wanted to put my focus onto Japan when so much is happening in Europe with what's going on with the swing to the right, which is what I told about, and also you remember I predicted all about French politics going a bit crazy, all happening, and Belgium and so forth. All those predictions I made about Europe are starting to come true, and also a lot of the predictions I made about Canada with Trudeau and corruption charges, beginning to see rumbles over there with that happening. But today I want to talk about Japan. And why Japan? Well, a number of reasons. Partly, I've got some Japanese people coming over to do an interview with me, which is going to be interesting. And for some of those that are members to the site or patrons as well, I'm going to put a few behind the scenes with that, and I'll show you some of the filming of what goes on with that and some of my other predictions I make about this. But I particularly want to talk today about this because I've trained my focus on it, and I've started to see a few things, and I feel I want to share some of those things with you. Now, some of you may have read my book, right? Messages from the Universe. I put it up. It isn't a plug to buy it, but it is very good. Go and buy it if you like. But in there, you'll remember I had a number of NAADI readings. Now, those that don't know about NAADI readings, I won't go into great details, but you know, in both the book and in Mystic Journey to India on Amazon Prime, I talk about how I consulted these incredible leaves from India. And got some prophecies about the future. And I offer some of that on the website. You can go and have a look at the prediction in the description if you want to get a NADI yourself. But in my particular case, I went all over India and I explored different NADIs and had all sorts of insights into this. And one of the NADIs, which I published in Messages from the Universe, told me about that I would predict about a black cloud that would fill the air and would travel across a continent and would I would warn its direction and help save people from the black cloud. Now, it's always intrigued me, and it's intrigued a number of people that have read the book. And in the back of the book, I explaining sort of quite raw detail. I just give the unabridged version of the Nadi with all the poor English in it and everything else. But it seems to suggest this dark cloud. And often when I do my readings and when I do my predictions, I sometimes see a dark cloud anyway. I see a dark cloud over an area that I want to talk about. When I first predicted the war in Ukraine, I was seeing a dark cloud over there, for example. Similarly, when I predicted the coronavirus, I was seeing in forms of a cloud. So that might be referring to the way I see things. But I've always felt there's kind of a physical explanation for this as well, that there's going to be something physically happen. Now, when I was asked to do some predictions about Japan, I started to see this. And I feel that something's going to happen there. Something is going to happen that could be some large Earth event of some sort that is going to create that cloud. I always kind of felt it was perhaps China area. For a long time, I felt, could that be China? Because I kept feeling it was the East. But could I be seeing it as possibly with Japan? Because Japan is a highly volcanic sort of area, as we know. It's got the Nankai Trough that runs next to Japan, which can give tremendous problems with earth changes. It's a submarine trough, and it's in the south coast of Japan, and it's located where the Philippine sea plate is being subjugated beneath the Eurasian plate, I think it is. Anyway, there's basically a very highly volatile area there, and this plate is often the one that generates huge tsunamis. And its seismic activity that happens there affects not just Japan, but the whole basin around that area. In fact, it was a massive earthquake from it in 1944 from that plate shifting. So I was thinking, could it be possibly that plate that's that I'm seeing here? That's the plate that could be moving, and could it create something that created gas of some sort? Because it's gas that is the dangerous thing about this gas cloud. So, or does that plate shift and does it create a gas cloud as well? Do you remember I predicted, and I predicted this before the NAADI told me, because the Fukushima problem, that when the nuclear power stations were affected by a giant tsunami stroke earthquake, and that happened. I predicted that, and you saw that on the television program, the Unexplained with Shatner. So but anyway, so I saw that before, but this seemed to suggest that there was going to be this dark cloud. So I'll give you my thoughts a bit more about that, but let's have a look first, because when I started thinking about this, I started looking up and seeing, does Nostradamus said anything about this? Did Edgar Cayce and others say anything about this? So let me just share with you first a few of the earlier prophecies that seem to correspond closely with kind of what I was feeling. So could perhaps Nostradamus have made a possible prediction about Japan? You of course, you know who Nostradamus is. He's the 16th century French seer, and he's famous for his many quatrains, which predicted all sorts of future events. A lot of it can be, of course, overread into. I think sometimes people overthink Nostradamus and make things fit a bit, but there's been quite a few claims nonetheless that Nostradamus did see things in Japan. He for example, there's some quatrains that seem to indicate that he saw the war and the conflict between Japan, for instance, in the Second World War. And some quatrains were thought to describe the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the language is highly symbolic, but in some places it does seem to give indications that could have happened. There's also indications in there of natural disasters. There's quatrains that have some connection to these natural disasters. He mentions the earth shaking fire from the center of the earth, which has been linked to some people by volcanic activity or earthquakes. Now, we know Japan is a place full of earthquakes and things, but could Nostradamus have been seeing this all those centuries ago? He talks about a lot of future catastrophes, for example. He talks about, in a few quatrains, he interprets the future with catastrophic events in Japan. There's one or two interesting ones I picked out from Nostradamus. In Century 9, quatrain 83, it says, Sun 20th of Taurus, the earth will tremble very mightily. It will ruin the great theatre filled, to darken and trouble air, sky and land. Then the infidel calls upon God and saints. So some have interpreted this as a reference to earthquakes and other natural disasters, the great shaking of the earth. A hint there of the Taurus sign. Anyway, in the Century 2, quatrain 89, there's another one. One day the two great leaders will be friends. Their great power will be seen to increase. The new land will be at the height of its power. To the bloody one, the number recounted. Now, again, this has been interpreted different ways, but some have interpreted this as a reference of the war between World War II and the relations between Japan and United States. So it's obviously important with Nostradamus to be careful how we interpret things, but there's hints there, some of which have been cited in the Japanese press. And then, of course, there's also Edgar Cayce. Now, Edgar Cayce, he's often referred to as the sleeping prophet. He used to go into a trance and give a lot of remedies, which was pretty amazing. And many of those are still used to this day. And he would be able to tell people things, give medical remedies about people who were remotely from him, and yet give quite detailed consultations. But he also made a number of predictions about all sorts of fascinating stuff, including Atlantis and Egypt. But some say that in some of his trance prophecies, he saw Japan. And again, he did actually say, Cayce predicted significant global changes in the world. He actually, some interpret it as the flipping of the poles, because the South and North Pole can flip, not the whole Earth turn around, but the magnetic pole shift. And when that does, what could happen is great big earthquakes all over the place, which would be enormous. And it has happened through history, and we're due for one, but it's over millions of years. So, we may be 10 or 20,000 years out either side, hopefully, but it's due. But he predicted this, and he said he foresaw that parts of Japan would eventually sink into the sea due to seismic activity. The whole of Japan, large parts of it anyway. And a reading given in, I've got my notes here, and a reading given in 1934, Cayce stated, the greater portion of Japan must go into the sea. So he's saying that Japan could have major problems with major seismic activity. And even nowadays, we've also got, there's a whole thing with manga in Japan. And just like, people have seen The Simpsons as a way of predicting the future. And often we've seen like Trump coming down the escalator and things in strange predictions in The Simpsons. They've been seeing various things in manga, particularly a guy called Ben Gotto, I think it is, who prophesies and he incorporated the prophecies of Nostradamus sometimes deliberately into it. But many are thinking in Japan that there's going to be a very special event in 2025, and July 2025. There's been predictions for this, that many in Japan have thought this is the date when some of these prophecies could happen. I saw these things happening in my own earlier predictions this year in some respects. Let me explain. First of all, that NAADI prediction said that it would happen when I'm 71 running. Now, when they in the NAADIs, when they talk about running, when they say, they mean the year you're heading towards. So that means when I come to the age of 70. So that could indicate then that the black cloud could happen this year, between now and my birthday in January 2025. So perhaps I am fulfilling the prophecy by making the warnings of it now and saying what will happen, because when this happens, it will not just affect Japan, it will affect, I feel, much more than that, because I see this perhaps, it could be there's so many other trenches. There's the Maria Trench as well under the Pacific. But what I kind of felt was something was going to happen. There was going to be sort of one huge thing happening in the Pacific. It's an area we don't ever think about on the news and things like that. But when I'm doing my world predictions, sometimes the Pacific comes into it for some reason. And I feel that there's something going to happen out there. So maybe it's something that's very big and that it affects Japan, but could also affect Hawaii and could also affect the west coast of America and right the way down to Mexico. And you could interpret this as a tsunami, possibly, but I felt it was a shake. It was like both sides of the Pacific were shaking. Like there's one huge great plate, and it's going like this on both sides, as if we're getting simultaneous shifts all at once. And although I don't think it's necessarily going to be the same as what Edgar Cayce said, where he said he saw Japan sinking into the sea, and I don't think it's quite as I'm not quite sure about those predictions about Nostradamus, but I do get a feeling there's going to be something pretty big, and it will affect both California, Mexico, Hawaii, and in more particularly Japan, because it's closer to Japan. My thoughts are, though, I don't think it will be on that date that they've been worrying about. I get a feeling it's all I can say. I can't see that date. Put it that way. I feel it could be possibly the NAADI, which is pretty accurate usually, could be in this year running, as it were, up until end of January 2025. But I just get the feeling there's something there going to be coming up, and that's I kind of saw it earlier on, didn't I? And I feel that it's something ahead. So I'm putting it out there today, so that you've got this prophecy, and I feel that will be a you see it's a shake, but something releases. It's a gas cloud of some sort. The Nadi specifically said it's like a gas cloud. So could it be something that's come up from the Earth's mantle? It could come up through the Pacific, even couldn't it? It could bubble up right the way through and be a gas cloud. That's something we're going to have to be concerned about, and its direction. Now, I'm seeing it as soon. I may be wrong. May perhaps this might be further ahead yet, but I do think this is going to be something that's going to be very significant to us, and we need to think about later on. So sorry about that, but that's my warning, and that's what I feel is ahead. So I want to now look at Japan a bit more detail on the more mundane stuff, and the stuff that I feel is going to be happening to Japan now and in the future. But I don't see Japan being wiped out by this or anything. I just see that there is another natural disaster of some sort that's going to be, it's not going to wipe everybody out, but it's something that it will be of concern for the future. So let's see how things pan out as we move ahead. So let's see if that turns out with the gas cloud thing that is there in the NADI, and whether it does happen in from the age of my age at the moment, or whether it's from this period, because sometimes the NADI can give you a 10-year period, so it might still be there, but it's from this time. Anyway, we'll see in the future with that, but it's in the book if you want to look at more details about that there. So in the description below, you can always get the books and things. So let's have a look at some of the other things. Now, one of the other major things that I predicted is I've said about the war with Taiwan, which I've said will happen. It's already building up, and I was talking about this a long time ago, as you know, but it's beginning to sort of build up again. And I feel it's going to come to a head just around the time of the American elections, I said. Now, the elections are coming up in November. So sometime after that, we get a Taiwan situation again. Now, maybe what I'm seeing there is an attempted invasion of Taiwan by China. I've mentioned this before. I think ultimately that Taiwan will be able to prevent the invasion of China, but we're going to start seeing much more of this taking over of islands and things like that. And I'm seeing it happening to Japan as well, particularly some of its outer islands, and particularly the ones closer to Russia, because I'm feeling Russia getting involved with this whole area a lot more. There's been deals done in the past over Ukraine, and I feel that Russia owes China a few favors. And it might be the case that Russia actually takes some islands from Japan, which could be, of course, very politically dangerous as much as anything else, because it's an invasion of a country, albeit just a piece of rock or something like that. It's still in Japanese waters. And similarly, I'm seeing China trying to do the same thing. And this is one is distracting from the other. It's like Russia is distracting from the problems, the planned build up in Taiwan. They're working in cahoots, I see, with this. So this whole business with Taiwan attempted invasion is going to happen, and I feel that what's going to happen at the same time, we're also similarly at the same time, we're going to see serious problems again from North Korea doing rocket launches at the very time this is all happening, to cause even more chaos into the mix. And so I see a very volatile time ahead, and these things don't happen overnight. These things usually sort of build up. Wars gradually start and invasions gradually start, and we've already started to see the beginnings of this in 2024, I feel, but we will see much more of it as we go into 2025. So the Taiwan crisis will be happening over this period, and Japan is going to make some moves with it as well, because Japan is in quite a vulnerable position. It's always been very defensive with its military. But I see Japan developing a much more offensive military. In particular, I'm seeing a new navy in Japan. And when I say a new navy, I see a large navy being developed, a brand new, lots of shipping with naval vessels, and in particular submarines. And I'm seeing nuclear submarines, Japanese nuclear submarines carrying nuclear missiles, very similar to what we've got here in the UK with our Trident. Now, these things can't be built overnight, but I feel that they're building these as a deterrent, both to Japan, both to North Korea and to China, and because of the crisis that will occur in in Taiwan. There may be some link with this with Australia. I don't know whether Australia has some tie-up also with Japan, a mutual protective order of some sort. Maybe they're going to have a treaty or something and share their submarines or something like that. I'm feeling there's going to be something where Australia is going to get involved with this as well. So this is obviously very dangerous because it's building up the military presence in that whole area, but I feel that Japan has no choice, and it will be politically very difficult because of all what happened in the past with the horrors of nuclear warfare. But I feel Japan has no choice. Some of the other things I see with Japan as well, strangely enough, this is an odd one, but it's I just saw, I was tuning in, and Japan has beautiful forests. It's a long, thin country, as it were, and it goes through quite a few zones because it's such a long country. It has many different forestry areas and very different. Each part of Japan from south to north has beautiful forests. But I saw in those forests an infestation of insects. Flying insects of some sort. They looked to me initially as a moth or a butterfly, and I see something like that happening. So that's just something else that I picked up when I was tuning in to see what I could see. I saw this flash and I thought, okay, I better say what it is. I don't know if it's anything serious or not, but I just saw this whole loads of flying insects actually. And another thing I saw too, and I don't think it's necessarily related to the major earthquake that I spoke about, but I see it as if there's another tremor of some sort. It could actually show a small eruption at Fuji, Mount Fuji, that has an eruption of some sort. I don't see it popping and completely blowing up or anything, but I feel as if there's smoke coming from Fuji. And similarly, at that same time, I saw a famous temple, a tall sort of temple, sort of part, a tower type thing that looks like to me a Japanese temple, and it had high steps, long steps, either leading up to it or by it. But I saw something about long steps, so I feel I'm in a mountainous region, and I felt that temple collapsed. Famous temple collapsed, an ancient temple collapsed, and I see it as something like where I see it all like in the Japanese press, because it's a bad augury, it's a bad symbol, and it's a bad sign. It's a sign of some sort, people are saying. So I saw something like that happening too, as well as the Fuji thing that I've mentioned there. Now, in terms of Japan generally, I think one of their main political worries is this Russia-China alliance that I feel is going to pose new threats to Japan, and again with these islands occupied. So this is going to be the main crisis ahead, I think, in 2025. And they're getting nukes and things like that. But nonetheless, despite all these things going on, I feel that Japan is going to get reasonably good growth in 2025 economically, do quite well. I feel that there's going to be a big battle still against inflation, which will put a lot of stress on the economy there. And I just get the sense that what Japan's going to do, it's going to introduce a kind of a radical new way of dealing with the economy. I feel that they're going to bring something in that is actually going to work, and it kind of rescues an economy from the abyss, as it were. And I see a deal being set up in 2025 too with Donald Trump, who will be the president of America by that time, and a major deal is going to be done to help recover Japan as becoming get back its world status again, and that will be done with the help of America. And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing Donald Trump in Japan doing a deal, and that deal is going to be very, very successful for both countries. And it's radical. It's very, very radical, and it particularly deals with both inflation, but it also has something to do with older populations too, and helping older populations continue to work. I'm seeing something else actually with this. It's kind of like the rest of the world. Japan has a aging population, but I'm seeing, and it's often that aging population, it would be very, very difficult to go and work in a factory or go and work with the boss. But I'm seeing something where aging population starts to work very much with artificial intelligence. That Japan becomes a leader, working particularly with its older people, where they use artificial intelligence and a bit of human help with it as well to make some quite significant changes to incomes, and helping people to increase their livelihoods as a work from home mentality. But it's like there's a big advance coming, I feel, in Japan. We've already seen it, of course, in America, mainly at the moment, with Microsoft and Google soaring ahead, Tesla thinking about getting involved in the artificial intelligence, Apple wanting to get involved. Everybody's jumping in. Japan's has been kind of a bit quiet at the moment, but I'm seeing something that they're working on, something that will probably be very close to the idea of working something very directly with the brain, in the same way that Elon Musk is talking about maybe being able to get an implant of some sort. Not quite as dramatic as that, but there's some sort of way where we can almost help do things. And it's like it comes out of some medical advance that they do for dementia. And there's something I get something also, but there's something to do with dementia, and there's a medical advance, and it's like it's an implant type thing, and they suddenly see it as another application that people can use this as a way of enhancing their work abilities. So something major is coming out of Japan, something where you might be able to have a plug-in language or something like that, where you can start to get a really major advance coming from Japan. I feel there's going to be some revelations of corruption in the government too, both past and present, and there's going to be a lot of political upheaval over corruption that has been hidden, and will come to the fore. Uh, I also sense that there's going to be uh, a big new housing crisis too in Japan. I feel that they've got problems there, and I see, in particularly in Tokyo, I'm seeing protests and things, and people protesting on the street about housing and rental prices and things like this. I'm getting a feeling with here, um, and I feel that they're going to do something again with another radical policy, which encourages people to um, move to the countryside more. And part of this work from home technology, where we get big tax breaks if you long as you're working outside of the city centres. And I get the feeling there's going to be sort of rental tax breaks of some sort if people work from home away from the city centres. So there's this drive to move people back into rural Japan. And I think this would be a good thing. Um, Another thing with the emperor of Japan, what's his name? Naruhito? Is it Naruhito now? Uh, I get the feeling I see around him making a change in the laws in Japan too, because in Japan, the laws of succession say that only a male heir can follow him. And as far as I understand it, I think it would mean that he's got, I think, a daughter, Aiko, and I feel that she will inherit the throne. I feel there's going to be moves to allow a change in the rules so that you would have an empress of Japan in due course. And I feel that will happen in 2025, late 2025. I'm seeing this happening here. I also feel I'm kind of jumping a bit from subjects again here, but I'm kind of trying to pick it up as I go a bit as well, because I also feel there's going to be a kind of new way of doing wages in Japan as well. We've introduced the idea of universal wages and things like that, and everybody gets the same wage as a basic starter. They've done it in some of the Scandinavian countries, but and in India. But I'm seeing something where people get credits. It's like a a cryptocurrency of some sort, in which people are given credits, and everybody gets those credits. And this is a new way of doing things. Like I said, there's going to be a big revolution in Japan when it comes to how we do capitalism. A complete new way of doing capitalism. And I feel that comes out of Japan and will be a model for the rest of the world, actually, because it will help the world and it will work as well. Another thing I saw culturally, I mean, Japan's been doing very well. In Japan, they a bit like we used to have Cool Britannia here in the UK. It's Cool Japan now. I know that many people around the world, including my granddaughter, is mad keen on everything Japanese. But I'm seeing a kind of a new kind of cultural revolution coming out of Japan. But this time it's the music industry. I mean, Japan's been popular with its art and its manga in particular, and some of its quirky sort of stuff that it comes out with. But I'm seeing a female singer. It's a bit like we have the Swifties over here. I see something, a big sort of movement happening, because I'm seeing a female singer rising in Japan who who has, there's something about white. She wears all white. I feel like I've got a long, long white dress, like an extremely long white type of wedding dress, and standing almost high on a sort of plinth of some sort. And I'm seeing this as becoming quite a worldwide fad musically, right? So I feel this is something that's going to be very important for Japanese culture in the way ahead. And these are the kind of the main things. I was also sensing something happens significant around Japan in the Christmas period. So 2024 Christmas period. I get the feeling this, I don't know what it is, but I just saw some critical thing happening very close to or on Christmas in Japan as well. So I just feel as if we see it on the television about Japan during the Christmas time. Um, I also feel that maybe some blackouts in Japan as well. I saw something with cables falling to the ground and pylons falling to the ground. So I feel as if they're gonna suffer also from some serious blackouts there as well. Um, Now, finally, just the last thing. I think Japan will do quite well economically. I think it'll have a lot to do with a tie-in that they'll do more and more with America and also with Taiwan. I feel them strengthening their ties with Taiwan, and I know the Japanese and the Taiwanese never really got on in the past, of course, because of the Second World War. But I'm seeing still as if there is a kinship between the countries, and I'm seeing also being very much tied in with America. Major technological innovation coming out of Japan. I feel they make a whole new investment in those things. Lots of new research, and like I say, in particular, a sudden advance in AI, and particularly AI that has a lot to do with culture and art and things like this as well. A complete economic restructuring in Japan, I see. Major changes, including there's be lots of efforts to boost productivity, but particularly IT type of things. And I'm seeing lots of trade agreements, particularly again with America and North America, and particularly also with Australia. I'm seeing major reaches out like this. Barriers down with China. I'm seeing Chinese Japanese relationship extremely bad on all levels. Lots of important cultural influences coming out of cool Japan, I feel. And I think these will resonate around the world and contribute to the Japanese regrowth. And a lot of cultural shifts, a lot of social shifts happening in Japan. And I feel that there will be a much more we've had woke around the West, but I feel there's going to be a much more a movement towards inclusivity in Japan, and a stronger move for the position of women in society as well, particularly when we see the new Empress of Japan. It will become like a symbol of Japan. Now, one last thing, which I just found interesting, because I obviously, because I was thinking about Japan, I wanted to have a look about what's happening in Japan. And there's an incredible thing over there happening, which I caught my attention, which I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I think it's called Shirin Yoku, which basically is the idea of forest bathing. And now, what we mean by that is, it started back in the 1980s, and it's been around a while in Japan, in which people go out into the forest, and you don't go from, not go Uber walking and bounding through the street like ramblers and things. You just take it in. You go into the forest and you really take it in. You breathe in the natural environment. And although this is already happening in Japan, it caught my attention, and I get a feeling there's going to be a bit more of a spiritual regrowth in Japan, because Japan has become very materialistic over the years. I think 80% of the people now, more or less, aren't that involved in their religion like they used to be. I mean, we got Buddhism in Japan and Shinto in Japan and some other smaller religions in Japan, including Christianity and even Muslims. But I feel with Japan, there's going to be something that is very close to this Shirin Yoku, something that is about getting back to nature. And I'm seeing people in their masses flocking to the forests. So although this is something that has been around, I get the feeling it's going to be something that's going to be quite big in the future. And also on the religious side, I also get a negative side on the religious side as well. Sadly, it always got negative with me, haven't you? But I see a negative side as well, because I also see, and it's not linked with this movement, but I get the feeling that there's another movement in Japan where we seem to have something where we've got somebody that is another extremist sort of religion, a small cult that may make a terrorist sort of attack, because I'm seeing a terrorist attack on the transport system in Japan. It might be something like an underground system or one of the bullet trains. I'm seeing some terrorist attack happening, and it seems to have a weird religious connotation to this. And I'm seeing, I've got no hair, but I'm seeing someone who's got all their hair shaved, and I don't even know if the devotees have all their hair shaved or something as part of this, possibly. And I saw a flower tattoo on the side of the head. I don't know if that means anything. I've never seen anything like this, but it looked like a flower tattoo that people carry on the head, or perhaps just if they got mainly shaved head, perhaps if they got hair here, is under the hairline or something odd like that. And I felt that that's another thing that happens, but that's a minor thing compared to the good spiritual growth that I do feel will happen in Japan. I see an improving technology, and although I see those horrible things with gas clouds and things like that, if that is what I'm seeing, and if that is what's coming, I do feel Japan will weather that storm and will weather future storms with the potential earth changes that are ahead. Okay, that's my thoughts for Japan. I'll probably do some new ones and more as I get interviewed for this interview that I'm going to be doing with the Japanese people coming over to see me at the studio. So I'll put a link at some point in one of the videos. If I might be able to come back to this one later and put a link in as well onto their videos too, so you can have a look at what I've said on that program as well, though most of that will be overspoken, I expect, in Japanese. And if you do enjoy watching these channels, don't forget, do subscribe, and always give me a thumbs up every time you watch, if you would, guys. I know most of you that come to the channel are regulars, so if you're a regular, if you always give it a thumbs up, that's fantastic from my point of view, because it helps to get these videos out to a wider audience and helps to spread it so more of you can subscribe, of course. And have a look in the description for all the services we offer, and in particular the workshops that I'm doing. I'm planning a number of more mediumistic workshops that people can join in, with these group reading ones that I call them, and the Yi Ching one went brilliant the other day. But also I've got some new ones coming up, and watch out, because I'm going to be doing some about NAADIs as well in there as well. And all of this, including NAADI readings, can be booked in the description below. Okay, thanks for joining me. See you soon, guys. Bye for now. So do you like what I have to say? And do you like my work? Well, why don't you support my work? Have a look in the description below to go to my website, find out about psychic readings, find out about our NAADI readings with the Indian NAADI Oracle, Buy my books and join my workshops online by Zoom. All there on the website psychics.co.uk.